Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again. Another beautiful week of music here. I look forward to talking all things Dendera in advance of their new album, Mask of Lies, which is due out June 14th, just next week. We were fortunate enough to get an advance copy of this and look forward to covering this album in depth in advance of its release. But before we get to Dendera and all things British metal, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I feel like the metal gods have responded to my comment about the first 3 or 4 months of the year being a bit slow musically, because I feel like every time we record there's like 9 new singles to talk about, and it's almost like these singles are just like teeing up these albums that are going to come out, in the next 7 months or so to finish out the year. So lots to look forward to, and I guess when it rains it pours, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, the bands, not only are we getting albums from new bands and bands that we've obviously been listening to for a long time, but bands that have kind of faded away in certain cases are coming back into the fold as well. I mentioned Balance of Power a couple of months ago, but another band that I am a massive fan of, and that is King Crow, the Italian progressive metal band that's released a handful of albums that I just really, really love and that hold up exceptionally well. All of a sudden, I'm on YouTube, and you were kind enough to send me their new single, Kintsugi, from an album that is due out on August 23rd called Hopium, and I have all the Hopium in the world.
I love that title. It's such a great title.
I have all the Hopium. I'm smoking the Hopium after that song. It was kind of electronic, kind of different for them, but certainly unmistakably King Crow. And if that song is any indication, I think the album is going to be a hit. So I look forward to that one.
Yeah, same here. I think somebody I know on Facebook just had posted like, "Hey, look, there's a new King Crow song," and the first thing I did was send it to you before I even listened to it. So I thought that was exciting news, because it's been a while since King Crow's last album. I don't know. I feel like I kind of forgot all about them. Their last album came out in 2018, so it's been 6 years.
It feels like longer, I guess, with like COVID in there and everything else. I don't know. I can't even say that their last album was my favorite, but they like I said, 2 or 3 albums worth of material that I just simply adore. So I'm looking forward to this. And another band that I loved their last release, I wasn't sure if they were finished. I hadn't heard anything from their camp, but a band called Paralydium, another prog metal band, got rid of their singer, which I think was a loss, or at least I kind of thought it would be a loss, because I just loved their melodic prog sound. But in with the new Alexander Lick, Lycke, has filled in on vocals. I had never heard of this guy, but they have released a new single called Sands of Time, and the music is the same. The vocals are obviously have a little bit of a different feel to them, but the guy can sing, and I'm lining up for this new album as well, just because I love their brand of melodic prog. Ironically enough, it also comes out on August 23rd on Frontiers. The album is called Universe Calls. Did you have a chance to check this out?
Yes, I've listened to it a couple of times, and I like this quite a bit. I remember when they were just the Paralydium project, and it was just like a 3-track EP. And
yes,
I remember talking about that with you, like being like, "Wow, this could be good." And I didn't realize that like the band is mostly made up of Dynasty or ex-Dynasty members, and the singer who departed is actually the growler for Amaranth. So like it's kind of a Swedish supergroup, I guess, in ways.
And you want to talk about a talented guy. He sings all cleans on this, and he sounds, or at least on the last album and the EP and whatnot,
who knew?
Sounded great. And unfortunately, I guess Amaranth duty calls, so he's no longer singing. But the new guy, Alexander Lick, is quite good. So different, but he fits in.
Georg or George, depending on whose lineup you look at. He's Georg in Paralydium, he's George in Dynasty, but he is the husband of Linnea Wikström Egg, and she's the daughter of Thomas Wikström from Therion fame. it all kind of ties together. But she was part of the band in the early stages. It doesn't look like she's part of it now, but I did like that there was a little bit of a kind of a duet kind of thing going on in the early stages. Not sure if that's going to follow suit, but her husband is the drummer, so you never know if she ends up on the album. But I've always been a fan of hers ever since Therion played at Prague Power. She came over to do. She was one of the two female vocalists, and I remember being like, I don't know who this is. And she must have been like 19 or 20 years old at the time. But I guess her dad being in the band also kind of brought her along, and she was really good. So I've been interested in her stuff. She was part of the whole at the movies thing that went on during the pandemic, which was really
That was great stuff.
entertaining. I know. I kind of, it's funny because I was talking to my friend Lena today about the King of Wishful Thinking, which was a Go West song. Oddly enough, not the first time I talked about Go West with somebody this week, because I talked to our friend Brian about the Rocky IV soundtrack. Very strange connections going on today. But anyway, it brought me back to like, oh yeah, I actually know the At the Movies version of that better than the original. And then I started looking and I was like, man, they came out with a lot of fun covers. That was a good time, and it just got me thinking of how like bands and artists really had to get creative during the pandemic in order to like get out there, because they weren't touring. And so it was just, I think we're going to remember it as a really interesting time. I mean, it's about how this whole thing started too. So, only thing is that we're still doing it, unlike At the Movies, kind of, took a little break, I guess. But, yeah, that just, I just like feel like I'm going through this band's like lineup, and it's like, it goes into like 9 different directions. You know?
Where's Kevin Bacon in all this? Because I feel like he's not far away.
Yeah, Thomas Wikström is the Kevin Bacon of Swedish metal, apparently.
Nice. Did you get a chance to check out anything else that's worth mentioning?
Yeah, a couple of things. I got our mutual friend Pat, and I feel like these days we kind of have to be more specific, because we have about 19 friends named Pat, Patrick, Patty. It's, and then there's my dog Petunia, who we call Pat sometimes also. So, but we're talking about Pat Gravino, our friend from New York. He sent me this track from speaking of UK metal, a UK band called Sellsword, and the track is Saxon Steel. Saxon, like the band Saxon, and it's like a killer like power metal tune. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I don't know if there's a album coming out. The band hasn't released an album since 2019's Unto the Breach. I don't know that I ever really heard anything from this band before, but I'm very curious now, because it's definitely my kind of power metal.
Yeah, you sent this over to me, and I listened to it, and I immediately thought of you. I'm like, this is melodic, it's fast, it's catchy, it's happy.
You immediately thought of me, and then you sent it back.
I was going to say, I immediately thought of you and then put on some doom metal. But no, kidding aside, I enjoyed this song a lot. When I don't love power metal the way that I used to, but when it's done well, I still can enjoy it quite a bit. And this song was done very well. I enjoyed this quite a bit. So kudos to them. I'm wondering if they're going to do anything else, or if it's just the single. I have to assume this is going to lead to other things for them.
I hope so, because I have to go back and listen to those first 2 albums, because this definitely sounds like something I would really enjoy. So that was cool. And then staying in the power metal realm, Hammerfall released their next single, or I believe it's the second one from their upcoming album, Avenge the Fallen. The track is called The End Justifies. The album is set to release on August 9th. And I sent this track over to you because it just, to me, really reminded me of the old days of Hammerfall. You know, we did an episode on Legacy of Kings, which was their second album that came out in 1998, and that was a long time ago. But man, this like reminded me of kind of like a modernized version of the old Hammerfall, and I'm kind of hoping the rest of the album kind of follows suit, because I am not in the like down on Hammerfall camp like a lot of people are, but I feel like they've basically released the same album repeatedly since like 2007 pretty much. So I mean, you know, some bands are just gonna stay the course, and that's fine. There's plenty of other bands out there. So I always listen to Hammerfall every time they release an album, and I'm just kind of like, okay, it's another Hammerfall album. I enjoyed it, but it's not making any lists or anything. So we'll see. I thought this was a really promising track, and much like Freedom Call, like I mentioned last week, seems to be kind of channeling the early days. I feel like this track kind of was channeling the early days of Hammerfall.
I would argue, and maybe it's a little bit of hyperbole, but not much, I'd argue it's the best Hammerfall song I've heard in 20 years. I don't know that it's breaking any ground, but it reminded me of the old Hammerfall stuff that I loved, and I still like those first two albums a lot. They lost me a little bit after that, and certainly with the last few albums, I just thought they were listenable. I didn't think they were anything to write home about, but this song was really good. It was almost like going back in time. I'm wondering if it's an oddball or if it's representative of the album as a whole, but either way, it actually has me excited to listen to the album. I know we have a bunch of fans of Hammerfall that listen to the podcast. If you haven't heard the new single yet, definitely go check it out. I think there's a lot to sink your teeth into.
Absolutely. And I'll mention one other thing today. I listened to one of the alumni of the podcast, Mr. Arjen Lucassen. He released a new album. I think he'd mentioned it when he was on our podcast, Lucassen and Soderbergh's Plan 9, which is really kind of like just a kind of a spacey prog rock kind of album, not terribly different from the Supersonic Revolution album that came out last year, in my opinion. That one, I don't know, it's kind of has that vibe. I think that these were a bunch of songs that they had written together back in the day when Arjen, I think, was like a solo artist before Arion was even, came to fruition yet. And so there's some fun stuff on here. I still really like the single Ice on Fire is my favorite track. But if you're looking for something just like off the beaten path, like Arjen's solo stuff and like this kind of stuff is always kind of fun because I feel like he leaves the metal at home and explores kind of like his more prog rock, like 70s and 80s prog rock roots. So this is fun. Like it was an enjoyable listen and just something kind of light. I had a very busy day at work today and was like, I need to put on an album. And I was like, I was looking at what I had and I was like, do I listen to Lucassen and Soderbergh's Plan 9 or the new Rotting Christ? And I was like, all right, I'm going to go with Lucassen on this one. We'll save Rotting Christ for another day. But that was, choices were made and I stick by them.
It's funny. I think it has like that 70s prog rock vibe, like you mentioned, with a touch of Whitesnake, and maybe that's due to the vocals and whatnot. But despite that, they still happen to throw in those like vintage Arion female backing vocals and stuff like that. So there are elements of this that do remind me of what we now know as Arion. An interesting album, and I think you described it best. It was just an easy listen. Like you can sit down, you can put it on. I don't think it's the most thought-provoking album of the year or anything like that, but it is enjoyable, and I'm glad that these songs saw the light of day because the guy doesn't write a bad song. I think that there's varying degrees of greatness, but certainly a worthwhile listen.
Yeah, and while I'm on the subject of Arjen, they today, literally earlier today, they released the second single from Simone Simmons' solo album, Vermilion, set to release later this year. The track's called "In Love We Rust," and it's definitely a little bit more of a melancholy, like mid-tempo kind of track, whereas like the first single was a little bit more upbeat. But it definitely has that kind of early Stream of Passion, Arion, like just, it's got Arjen's fingerprints all over it and in all the best ways. So now we have two excellent singles out from this upcoming album. I'm pretty excited about this. I think this is going to be, if this doesn't end up on my, fairly high on my end of the year list, I will be surprised. August 23rd is the release date on that one.
That's going to be a busy day. That's 3 albums now that I got to check out that day.
Oh, really? Did we just say every album we've talked about just comes out on August 23rd?
More or less. But I'll say this. Stream of Passion was a band, and I'm glad you used that as a comparison. That is a band that when I first came out, I liked them. But as time has gone on, I've actually begun to like them more and more and more. And I'm kicking myself for not seeing them at Prague Power when they played. I am really hoping to get the chance to see them live again one day, selfishly. I think they've just aged beautifully, and I think I like them a lot more than I did when that first album came out. That is an album at some point I think we should cover. I haven't selected it yet, but now I'm thinking I might have to, because I really enjoyed that album, and I don't think you can go wrong with any of their material. But that there's a lot there to check out.
Well, thankfully, it seems like the band is kind of active again after, like, the whole thing with that Prague Power show was that it was supposed to be one of their last shows as a band, and then they like came out with an EP last year, and now it kind of seems like they're, if nothing else, kind of like a part-time existence, which is good, because I think that,
I'll take it.
Yeah, it increases the chances of us getting to see them live again, and so hopefully it works out somehow, because that'd be great. I would love to see them again. I was lucky enough to see them the first time, and despite playing two covers, which Caleb is still talking about to this day, it was a good show. I just wish they had more than an hour, like, because for a band that was kind of like saying that this was going to be one of their last shows, I was like, oh man, like to only get an hour is kind of a bummer, but they still exist, so all's well and good. It reminds me of the last game at the Coliseum I went to twice, and it wasn't even the last game. Either time.
Before we talk all things Dendera, I just want to again thank everyone for listening. If you want to make a request and get yourself in the queue, we love hearing what you want to hear, so definitely consider joining our Patreon, where we take all of our requests from, and give us a like and a follow on our socials, and join the chat. There's a lot of interesting chatter that goes on our private Facebook group and whatnot, and all of our socials and all the information about our Patreon can be found at our website. So definitely check that out as well as metalexchangepodcast.com. That's metalexchangepodcast.com.
Before we go into Dendera, I think we should talk about the discovery that I came across by accident the other day when I was going on YouTube, and I was looking for a link to our theme song, thanks to Blood Sky, and the sword of Nietzsche. I still don't feel comfortable saying my own name, but I came across somebody was doing a what do you call it, a reaction video. Did I say the sword of Nietzsche? It's the blade of Nietzsche. I apologize, me. So check out Bemusing Bill on YouTube. He does a 12-minute and 45-second reaction, and obviously it's a good one. Otherwise, we wouldn't be plugging it. But it was really interesting to see him kind of talk about it, and struggle to figure out if Michael Mills was actually pronouncing my last name correctly. He was not, by the way. But I thought that was really cool, and Rich, who wrote the song, typically not a fan of reaction videos, but he made it an exception in this case. So I was really shocked. Like, I was like, wow, it was kind of quick to get onto somebody's radar. So that was cool. So definitely check out Bemusing Bill on YouTube.
Yeah, it was like completely out of left field, and when you sent it, I almost fell out of my chair. But the more the merrier. I'm glad he liked it. We got some interesting things that might be in the works there as well, which I'll get to offline. But yeah, cool stuff, and just really exciting to see that. And I think Bill was a little confused as to what the genesis of this was, so I reached out and I kind of just explained to him the backstory, and I think it was rather interesting, to say the least.
Oh, it's an interesting story. So
yeah, I mean, what can I say? So with that, we go to Mask of Lies. As I mentioned, Dendera's next full-length release comes out June 14th, 2024. This is their third full-length release to go along with a few EPs and a live album. And what's kind of nice is that this band has kind of been intact for some time now. I know often we talk about lineup changes and we talk about bands that are kind of floating, in and out of things or whatever. But this band has been together for quite some time. the main guy here, no pun intended, is a guy by the name of Stephen Main. He's the lead guitar player, and he kind of formed the band back in, I think, 2007. The core lineup here: Ashley Edison, who is an alum of the show, obviously ex Power Quest, is and now singing for Tiger Tails. The vocalist, his brother Bradley Edison on bass, Andy Finch on drums, all of whom have been with the band since around 2010, 2011, and David Stanton on the other guitars since 2015, and he's been with a number of bands, throughout the course of his career. But this group came together, and I think that the hardest thing for me to talk about when it comes to this band is what type of metal they play. It is metal. There's no question about it. But I hear, when I listen to them, different influences that cross multiple genres. Straight up metal, power metal, melodic death metal, touches of metalcore. They're really checking off, and even some prog here and there with some of the stuff that they're doing. And I'll mention that when we go through the tracks. But it's interesting because they kind of check off a lot of boxes, but I think it blends itself well together unless you're looking for one of those genres. Because if you're looking for something that's in one of those genres, it could miss the mark. But if you take it holistically, it's a very enjoyable listen.
I could not agree more. Everything you said is pretty much right on the money, and the same way I feel about it as well.
And to that end, when did you get into this band? I know this is obviously not the first time you've heard them. You've been listening to them for years. But what kind of put them on your radar?
It's kind of hard. I don't remember if it was before Ash joined Power Quest. I'm going to have to look and see when I added my first Dendera song to iTunes. It looks like I bought all of their albums in July of 2017. And when did Ash join Power Quest? 2017. So that probably was. I probably wanted to hear the other stuff that Ash had done when he had joined Power Quest. And one of the cool things is I have this bootleg DVD that somebody recorded of Power Quest's final show when the first time that they disbanded. They did a show at the Underground in I believe it's in London, and that's where they would always have. That's where they would have all of their that was kind of like their home base, and so they had a lot of special guests, and they had Ash come out on stage as the singer of Dendera to sing with the band, and it kind of turned out to be an audition in a lot of ways, because when the band got back together a couple of years later, Ash was pegged to be their new vocalist. So I guess that would be that'd be kind of where I started with that. I know our mutual friend Carl Frederick would always say, I remember him saying, he's like, yeah, it's cool that Ash joined Power Quest, but man, I've been listening to Dendera for years, and that band is great. And so I was like, oh, all right, cool. And I always, same with you, I always kind of struggled to lump them into a genre, because I feel like they have a lot of different styles that kind of blend together. I have them listed as just heavy metal because
there you go.
I didn't know what else to, because there's especially on this new album, there's a lot. It's very heavy. I mean, not to beat a dead horse on the word heavy, but it's heavy. If you're looking for something Power Quest-esque, this is really not it. The only thing that has in common with Power Quest is the vocalist. Ash,
it sounds nothing like Power Quest.
Yeah, Ash is an incredible singer, though, and I think that this is a really great, showcase of that. But this is the band's first full-length album since 2015, so it's been 9 years. They released two EPs, Blood Red Sky and Reborn Into Darkness, which were a part one and a part two. And I guess if you kind of combine them, you sort of have yourself a full album. But I guess with Ash being busy with Power Quest, Dendera may have slowed down just a tad. And now that Ash is back and has more free time to dedicate towards Dendera, maybe they'll be releasing more stuff. His brother Brad also had a short stint in Power Quest as well. He replaced Paul Finney when Paul left the band, and then unfortunately Paul passed away shortly thereafter. I never got to see Brad play with Power Quest, which stinks. I always really wanted to see the two brothers in Power Quest rocking out together. Alas. This is it's cool that they're together in Dendera, and I think all the band members kind of come together here and do a really nice job on this album. And I just, again, want to say thanks to Ash for getting us a copy of this album in advance so we could kind of talk about it ahead of the release date and hopefully get the band on some people's radars if they have not heard of them.
Yeah, a couple of things there. Number one, we've had it for a couple of weeks now, so I've been listening to it for a while. And I started off a little bit slowly just to get the taste, and then obviously I ramped up the listening this week in advance of the episode, and the album grew on me immensely. I mean, I liked it when I first heard it, but the more I listened to it, I was hearing nuances that I don't know that I picked up on the first few times around. But I just want to go back to one thing you said about the Underworld venue. When I was in London, the one and only time I was there, and going back 20 years, it'll be 20 years next month since I was last there.
Is this the story about when you took Benoit to the Power Quest concert?
Yeah, close. I dragged him to the Underworld just because I had known about this like infamous rock club or whatever, and I actually dragged him there just to grab a beer. Now, nobody was playing that night of note, so I didn't get to see a show there, but I wanted to just see what the place was like. And I remember, I think I had like a Kronosberg 7, like, whatever that is, that French beer or whatever it was. And so how I remember this, I have no idea. But I think I had one of those, and I had like a Carlsberg or whatever. And
you never forget your first beer at the Underground.
Yeah, who knew, right? And so I got to go get back there for a show. But I wanted to mention that, but just because you brought up the venue. But so before we get into it, did you have any like initial impressions of the album the first couple times you heard it?
I just remember enjoying it. It took me a few listens to kind of start distinguishing some of the tracks. Man, I listened to this album like 6 times, including like right before we started recording. I'm trying to formulate my thoughts, which don't always work. It doesn't always work so well for me, but I just remember thinking like, this is like, was the band always this heavy? Like, this is really like,
yeah.
It just, I was like really like in a good way. Like, I was like, this is really great. And again, it might have been my built-in Power Quest bias because I was just used to Ash. I've listened to Ash sing in Power Quest way more than I have in Dendera, I will admit. And so maybe I just kind of forgotten that this is just a really heavier band. Like, to me, this is a band that I think would be more at home on the radio or like on an XM like metal station than Power Quest would have ever been, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's not flower power metal. It's dare I say, got some balls to it, right? And so and I think that's what part of the allure is for me, because as I've gotten older, I've really gravitated a lot towards some of the heavier stuff. Or the proggy stuff, right? So it either goes in one of the two directions, and I think that this scratches that itch. But with that, let's try to do this justice, because nobody's heard the album. So I don't think anyone that listens to the podcast can say I've got an advanced copy of the album.
There's two singles that have been released so far. Mask of Lies was the first one, and I believe Fading was the second one. I'm just going to double check, make sure I'm not wrong, but I'm pretty sure those were the first 2. So at the time that this episode drops, you can check out those 2 songs. There's 2 4K music videos on YouTube that you can watch if you want to get a little bit of a preview of the album.
And I'll say this, because we will be able to kind of send our song, our clips for the song of the week. We'll spice them in, just to give people a taste of some of our favorite tracks. but I'm not going to be posting videos of the songs this week because it hasn't been released yet. And by the time this album comes out, I'll post our tracks of the week on social media. I'm not going to be able to do that this week, but I definitely want to give the album its due. It's justice. So
Yeah,
definitely recommend that you check it out.
we'll post the songs that are out already.
I think that's a great idea, just so you can hear both. That being said, this album kicks off, and it kind of starts with this intro called Face to Face, and it really is an intro track. It clocks in at about 1:20 or so. I am a sucker for like a good acoustic guitar intro, and that's kind of what you get on this track. It is a melodic guitar solo in many ways with great orchestration behind it, and it kind of, I don't know, in many ways, I guess, leaves the listener asking, like, where is this going to go, right? Like, so what are your thoughts about Face to Face, this opening tune?
This might be the only track that made me think of Power Quest, only because that acoustic guitar intro is very similar to the beginning of Revolution Fighters from the Sixth Dimension album. And I'll have to ask Ash if I'm pretty sure he co-wrote that song. So maybe it was a kind of an idea that he had in his head. But then, like, I really like the way that it builds. It feels just really epic. I feel like bands aren't doing these intro tracks as much as they used to. It used to be like a guarantee throughout all the 90s that every power metal album or heavy metal album would have some sort of dramatic, like, symphonic intro. This is really good. It has some like backing vocals from Ash, but I think that it really like builds the anticipation, and it cuts right into the first full length track of the song, like really smoothly. I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice by not listening to Mask of Lies without the face to face introduction to it. Really, the two songs really click together really well.
Yeah, so Mask of Lies kind of retains a lot of the same melody that Face to Face has, but the band is plugged in, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, a lot of things just kind of jump out at me. The drums are kind of really high up in the mix, and I don't know if that was done on purpose or whatnot, but they're very much in your face, very prominent. And it's not a bad thing, it's just more of an observation that it's just very noticeable how potent those drums are. And Ash's vocals remind me of like that angry Russell Allen style that you hear on a lot of the new Symphony X releases. It's not a bad thing. It's just I actually think that it provides a nice accompaniment to the growls that are found throughout this entire lineup. And I am not sure, and maybe you can tell me if he is doing those growls or somebody else is doing those like accompanying growls, but they are such a prominent accompaniment to this album. It's rather remarkable. I think the verses and the chorus on this have like a bit of a similar cadence to it, but the song itself has one of the best sing-along choruses on the entire album, and just overall it gives me a really heavy melodic death metal vibe. It was a perfect song to listen to when I was at the gym.
I actually asked Ash this when when the single first came out, and actually I didn't ask Ash. We questioned it when we were talking about the single on the podcast. He listened to the podcast and then reached out to me to answer our question. So thank you, Ash. But he said that the aggressive vocal is a combination of him and Steve, the guitar player. So
nice. Well, it's fantastic because it really is.
He also said he's going to be doing more of it live, though, as I struggle to do both. So.
Fair enough. I can understand that going in and out of that is probably not the easiest thing in the world.
No, but, I lose my voice doing this podcast for an hour. Are you kidding me?
Talk to me about Mask of Lies and your thoughts on this opening, the real opening tune.
Well, we won't have a problem with playing a song of the week that isn't out yet because this is mine.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if it's just because I've listened to it more than the rest of the album, but I just think this is such a killer tune. Like you said. Everybody in the band just comes out in full force. The drums, the bass, the guitar, the screamy vocals, the clean vocals. Ash definitely is showing more of his edge than what we got to see with Power Quest and, like you said, Russell Allen Symphony X. really good comparison there. I'm sure Ash will appreciate being compared to Russell Allen and not whoever Symphony X's first singer was that nobody even remembers the name of. But I just really like this tune a lot, and I think it was a really great choice for their first single. I really like Fading, also their second single as well. Those are probably my two favorites, oddly enough. So maybe the band felt the same when they were choosing singles. But let's give Mask of Lies a listen, and we will be able to post at least one of our songs of the week because this song actually is out already. But here is Mask of Lies from Dendera's album, also called Mask of Lies.
Backs against the wall, can we take no more? Look away, what I've seen is not for me. We can't go back, stood in our graves. We hold this death wishes inside. We're walking tall against it all. The fox is a revolution. Humanity's here, nothing left to fear. But those who fear rise with me again. Your mask of lies is where we finish down. The worst is yet to come. We will fall again. Deception's not your only sin. Kneel down. Your worst is yet to come.
A nice selection. I can certainly understand why you chose this track. I think if you would have asked me after the first listen or two, I probably would have gone with the same thing. But as time went on, my opinions of some of the tracks morphed a little bit. That brings us to Scream in Silence. And I think that this has a similar pacing as does the prior track. But that guitar riff that opens up this tune is just an absolute killer riff. And I think what drives this song more than anything is like the low end, the bass and the bass drums and just the low kind of down-tuned guitar. The growls on this, though, I think really give this song more of like a metalcore vibe than it really does the melodic death metal side of it. But what I love here is really what I thought the first track didn't have was a strong dichotomy between the verses and the chorus. And I think that they flow very well into each other. And then all of a sudden the instrumental section kicks in and the song kind of picks up speed and the drums get into this really like, this really, really, I don't know, nice beat to it that I liked with a nice melodic guitar solo. And then throw that on with a dark sounding bridge with growls at the end. And I think it makes for a really good song. I actually think I like this song even a little bit better than the first one, which is a solid song to say the least.
I really like some of the vocal effects, especially kind of towards the end of the song. It's almost kind of like an echoey kind of feel. Yeah, I agree with you. This is a really like just a heavy song, and I definitely kind of agree a bit with the like you said core. I think that's why I thought that this kind of fit. That's kind of what like satellite radio plays on their like modern metal stations. Like you basically with your options are you can listen to the two hair metal or like the hair nation or Ozzy's Boneyard, which is all kind of like throwback metal, and then there's like the newer metal stations really do play more of like a kind of a core sound. Like you're gonna hear Amaranth. They even play Powerwolf sometimes, which is kind of interesting. Sabaton's another one. I know these aren't great examples of core bands, but those are the bands that I recognize very infrequently that get played on those stations. But it's usually stuff a little bit more in this vein. So I don't know. I wonder if this has the potential to kind of break through as more of a mainstream, as far as mainstream goes, as far as heavy metal. Because I think that it's acceptable. You've made an acceptable album, Dendar. It's accessible to I think people that are more casual metal fan listeners.
Yeah, I think that's exceptionally well said. I definitely think that if you go to liquid metal, this could be this would fit in and nobody would bat an eyelash.
Mm-hmm.
I do. And it also has a more modern sound than something you would hear on like an Ozzy's Boneyard or something like that, which is really playing some of the classic stuff. But yeah, if you don't have anything else to say, I think we should move along to Fading and your thoughts on the second single.
Yes. Yeah, I will say, like, just to kind of put a cap on the satellite radio discussion, like, I feel like there's this where I think our podcast fills in an important gap is a lot of this, especially European power metal and prog metal from the 90s that I think just is like completely skipped over as far as like radio goes. Like it really goes from like, Maiden and Ozzy in the 80s, and then it goes like, it skips all the way ahead to like the last Powerwolf album. It's like, well, there was like 30 years of metal in between all of that. And so I really wish there was even if it was on there. I know like if you have the satellite app, there's a lot more channels you can listen to. So maybe
no kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe there's something like that. I don't know, but it would be nice to have something that plays stuff that's more in line with what we talk about on this podcast. So sidebar aside, track 4, Fading. This was like you said, the second single. I think this is another really strong track. I just think like the heaviness that I'm going to use the word crunchy. I feel like the guitars are just so crunchy. Like it's a very satisfying sound. The production is really well done. And I like the part where it kind of quiets down and like you get to hear kind of Ash do a little bit more of a subdued vocal, because I just think that he can sing really well in so many different ways, and like he has such a powerful voice, but he also can do like a kind of a chill passage, kind of like in this song, and it's cool, and the music kind of quiets down so that you can really hear his voice, and I think that was kind of my favorite part of the song. And then it kicks back in towards the end and kind of finishes out heavy and strong again. But I thought this was a really good tune and another solid choice for the single. I think there's one other song I liked a little bit more, and we'll get to it. But I thought this was a good tune.
See, this is interesting because it kind of goes right into this one. There's no intro to this track. It's just like right in with a bang. And I
love it. It's just that like the drum is like ba-dun song.
Right, and you're like right into it, right? It's like, and what I enjoyed was the dual vocals where like the cleans and the growls almost mimic each other, although they obviously sound nothing alike, but the melodies are the same. I think it's got like a solid chorus, but the punchiness of the guitars I thought was really good. The irony, though, is I think that as much as a solid tune as this is, it's not my favorite. It's a good tune, but I think it suffers from being between two songs I love, because Guiding Light, not my song of the week, but definitely a song of the week candidate for sure. It's one of my favorites on the album. But just to wrap up my thoughts on Fading, the extended bridge or outro is probably my favorite part of the song. So I think it ends really well. And then it leads into Guiding Light, which is this heavy, dare I say, melodic death metal tune with some power metal elements kind of baked in there. And I think Ash even goes a little bit angrier on this one, and it goes along really well with just the theme of this song. It's full of speed, it's energy, and while like the verses kind of bring the pain, the choruses kind of bring the melody. So I like that a lot. And it's the contrast and some of the most amazing guitar solos on the actual album that really resonate with me. And I'd be remiss not to mention, every time I heard this song, Andy Finch is just beating the shit out of that drum kit on this particular song. But like how he's hitting it with such force, I thought it was like noteworthy. So as you can tell, Guiding Light, I'm a big fan of this one.
Well, oddly enough, like while I was listening to this song right now, thunder just shot out of the sky, like thunder and lightning. So man, Andy really can play. He's like channeling the weather,
the god of thunder,
the weather gods. Yeah, the god of thunder and rock and roll. So yeah, I think everything you said is really spot on. I just found like every track on this album to have a really satisfying heaviness to it, because like I always tend to gravitate towards the more like kind of happy, Freedom Call, Power Quest, that kind of thing. That's kind of my milieu, if you will. But I enjoy listening to something like this too, just to kind of like, it almost like muck it up a little bit. It feels like almost like dirtier, like in a good way. Like it's this is just another song where I just I want to like have a 6-pack and go see this band live and just stand there and headbang. Like that's like kind of what I want to do. Like that's what this makes me think of. It's like just when you just have that perfect like beer buzz and you're just at a concert having a good time. Like that's where I want to be. Hopefully in 24 hours, that's where I will be.
That's true. I mean, you got big plans tomorrow, and I want to hear all about Symphony X and Angry Russ when you see him celebrating your birthday. But yeah, I agree. This is like as good as the album is, and obviously I'm kind of gushing over some of these songs, but like this is a band that I really want to see in a live setting because I feel like it would pack a real punch. So that being said, talk to me about The Fall, this next track. I feel like this one has a little bit of a different feel to it. It's a little slower and a little more deliberate, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's exactly pretty much what I was going to say. It kind of kicks in with a more kind of mid-tempo kind of feel. And it works. Like, I think that we always talk about like song placement, and I feel like this is a well-placed song because most of the songs up to this point have been like really in your face. And I feel like this kind of, even though it's still a heavy song and there's still heavy like death vocals and growls and stuff, just the fact that it's a little bit slower, I think just kind of makes you feel like you're taking a little bit of a breath in your listen of the of the album. So again, like just another really strong track. Like, and again, like there's a portion of the song where it quiets down and you can just really hear Ash sing. And I love that. I just kind of love these little like spotlight moments. And it's almost like even within the song, you're taking a little bit of a breath from all the heaviness and just being like, all right, we're okay. All right, let's get back to it. So yeah, another good tune. Like, I feel like all these songs pretty much like they all are like really good to me. Like nothing is like particularly less than or greater than. It's all like one really solid listening experience from start to finish, which is why I'm having a little bit of trouble kind of like formulating my thoughts on each individual track. I just really enjoyed the listening to the album more like on the whole than kind of a track by track basis, which makes it hard because that's kind of the format of our podcast is to talk about the tracks one by one. So I assure you I'm doing my best.
Well, let me say a couple of things about this track because oddly enough, because of like kind of the slower, more deliberate nature of it, I actually think this song has like a Nevermore vibe. And mix that with like a horror movie soundtrack because it has this haunting, almost brooding quality to it, which is cool because it doesn't sound like any of the other tracks on the album. And I think that it takes a little while to get going. So by the second verse, I think that's really when the band is kind of firing on all cylinders here. But when I first heard it, I didn't love it, but it grew on me and grew on me with each listen. And I will say, I think I do prefer the second half of the song when they are kind of firing. But that being said, definitely a grower and a good tune that is, again, and you said it, well placed. It's just a really good placement of this song kind of in the middle of the album before we get to Drift Away, which is an interesting track because it features Russ Parrish doing a guitar solo. And for those that don't know, who is Russ Parrish?
Are you asking me? It's Satchel from Steel Panther. I did not know that was his real name until just now, so thank you.
Well, it is. A little nod to Steel Panther, and I think that if I'm not mistaken, that's because Dendera had either opened for Steel Panther over in the UK or something like that.
I think Ash met them with
on the Tiger Tales
tour. I think Tiger Tales played with Steel Panther. Yeah,
that's it. There was a Tiger Tales tour where they were opening for Steel Panther, and cool solo. Listen, knock Steel Panther all you want for the gimmick, but the guys can play. Like, there's no doubt about it, and he does a nice solo on this one. So it was a nice guest spot, and I hope that it kind of gets some extra eyeballs onto this. But the song itself, interesting, right? Like it starts off with this like guitar intro. It's a kind of really tight. But again, I also hear a Nevermore vibe on this one as well. Not with the solo, but just kind of the pacing of the songs. The chorus, more than anything, I think was an earworm for me. And the way that they do the guitar solos with these kind of melodic sweeps up and down the fretboard, I'm a fan of that. And I'm not a guitar player, but even I know what's going on this one. So I like this. Not my favorite song, but I do like some of the elements here.
Yeah, I think this probably would have been my song of the week had not been Mask of Lies. Like you said, I think the chorus is super catchy. I love the guitar riffs are just super memorable. Like, again, I always talk about how I've really come around on growls over the years, and I feel like the Dendera does a really good job of balancing their cleans and their growls on this album to like, because I don't think I would enjoy this as much if it was just growls all the way through. Like I like hearing the clean vocals from Ash, but then the growls add a nice kind of like, I don't know, like spookiness to it or darkness to it or whatever, however you want to put it. But I just throw in the guest solo and everything, and I just think this is really one of one of my favorite tracks on the album. I just every time I listen to the album, this was one that just kind of stuck out a little bit more to me. I just everything about it, like from start to finish, I think all the parts just really come together to make a really good tune. So I like this one.
Nice. Not my favorite, but the next one, Inside My Head, is definitely top 3 for me. This is another banger from the opening note, and I think that this has a very like American power metal vibe, and by that I mean like an Iced Earth or a band like that. The growls again here, I think, provide a nice complement to the cleans, and it just makes it a little more interesting. No offense to Ash, I think he's a great vocalist, but I like the dual vocals and the fact that the two contrasting styles kind of play off of each other. I love the guitar interludes on this tune, and I think that there are parts of this song that will really appeal to the thrash fans. It makes me think of like a Patreon member, Charles Florio, who's, he's kind of guested on the podcast in the past. I feel like this song will really kind of be something that he is into.
I was thinking about him throughout the whole album. I think he's going to like this whole album, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you might be right. And you were mentioning, kind of wanting to see this band, with a couple of beers or whatever. This is one of those songs that I think live would just be absolutely terrific. I don't know what their plans are. I should note that they actually are scheduled to do a release show on June 22nd at the Dome over in London. They're doing an album launch. I'm assuming they're playing. I don't know if this song, Inside My Head, is in the set, but if it isn't, Ash, it should be. This is the song that you got to play live.
There you go. It kind of reminds me of when we saw Halo Effect at Prague Power last year, where it was like, I actually enjoy, as much as I like that album, I enjoyed it even more live, because again, had a couple of beers in me, and I was just it was my first concert of the weekend, so I was feeling good, and that just really impressed me. And I had so much fun watching that band, and I feel like this would be a similar experience. So I'm glad that you mentioned this. I just agree that this would definitely come across really well live. Another really good tune. Like I said, not a bad song to be found on this album.
Yeah, and then we got 2 left, and if you were looking for something different, then you get that with Stare Into the End. This is, dare I say, a ballad, but it's really this track with a melodic, atmospheric, almost like ephemeral feel to it. It's kind of odd, but it's got like shorter,
like a Catatonia kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, or like an Anathema or something. I don't really know, but it's so different. And I think the band I would actually compare them to is almost like a proggy Vola type of thing going on this track, which is cool because it's just so much different than the rest. It's well done. It's well placed. I like the fact that it's the penultimate track, and dare I say, almost needed to kind of break up the cadence of this thing.
Yeah, it almost kind of acts as a prelude to the end, so to speak, because it's a really short track at 3 minutes and 12 seconds, but I like this one a lot just because it's the biggest, I think, outlier on the album because of how chill it is. It's really just kind of like Ash with some like really kind of understated guitars. If you want to hear like what Ash's clean vocals are like, this is the song you will probably want to turn on. Just a more of a kind of an emotional track, but like you said, like well placed, and I think it kind of sets the table for the last track, which I could only assume is going to be your song of the week.
I either forgot to mention it, or yeah, this is my song of the week, and you're right, it is. It's called "Drag Me Below." And I'll just kind of, I want to hear your thoughts, but I'm going to kind of lead into the fact as to like why I chose this thing, and then I'll kick it over to you. But in many ways, Stare Into the End, the prior track actually leads into Drag Me Below. It's almost like one long track in many ways. This is another one of the slower, more deliberate tunes. And I think what really kind of caught my ear was that the verses almost gave me like a modern In Flames vibe to this particular track, which was really cool. And I think that overall the song was very melodic, and it was another one that I just thought I'm thinking, wow, this is another track that they have to play live. But what sold me on this as my song of the week, and I changed it because before today I was going to go with one of the other two tracks that I mentioned, but what sold it for me was the unbelievable chorus and just the overall powerful and emotional feel that we kind of end with that almost leave you like wanting more of the album. It's not the longest album. I think it's only about 44 minutes and change. So which is nice. You don't need an album to be much longer, but it goes out on a high note with just this melodic, powerful and emotional tune. And that's what made me choose it. So I'm happy to play a minute of it for folks. And I certainly implore people that when the full album comes out, give this song a listen. But here's Drag Me Below. So talk to me about your thoughts on Drag Me Below, this final track.
I think it's a really great way to kind of wrap things up. Like you said, you have this great little kind of like prelude that leads into it, and I think it's probably the most epic tune on the album, and I think it was the right choice to close things out. Like you said, it's not a super long album. I think it's like really a perfect length for the style of music. I found it to be a very easy listen. Like I said, I listened to it 6 times. I listened to it in the car. I listened to it everywhere. And it's a great car album, I will say. Like, pump up that volume because it's such a great, crisp production. It just sounds really well done. I mean, there's no excuse for having a shitty production in this day and age, and so I feel like these days we mention bad productions pretty infrequently when it comes to modern albums, but this one just, sounds really good to me. So yeah, I absolutely can see why you chose this as your song of the week, and I think that I think they did a real hell of a job with not just this track, but with the whole album.
Yeah, well said. This is, I think, the real test for me is how the album holds up over time. When I really got into it, it was like the score for me just kept going up and up and up. I'm curious to see how it does over the long term, but so it's hard for me to say like where this will fall in terms of like an end of the year list or anything else. But I enjoyed the shit out of it this week when I was listening to it. But I'll kick it over to you like I always do. On a scale of 1 to 10, what are you giving this?
I am giving this a 7.75. I thought it was very good all the way through. I was hoping there was going to be like one track that really like rose above the rest. I think Mask of Lies did to a certain extent, but I feel like it was just a really solid listening experience all the way through. And it's probably my favorite Dendera release to date. I just feel like the band gets better and better. And I think that I was just saying to you, off air, I think that they're going to get a lot of positive press from this release. I know Ash and the rest of the guys are really proud of it and really excited about it, and they should be. I liked it a lot, and it's not really like the kind of thing that I tend to gravitate towards. So I think that's really a high compliment coming from me, because it's like I said, I'm more of a like Power Quest kind of guy, but like this is great. This is great stuff. So cheers to all the guys, and great job on this one.
Yeah, your score is actually right where I'm at. I'm at a 7.75 as well, and rising. And I hope that it continues to even get better as I listen to it throughout the rest of the year. I think that there's a maturity in the songwriting, which is improved from album to album, from release to release, EP to EP, or what have you. And I think it's very noticeable on this album, just because, again, I think the prior albums were very good, but I think that this one, they really didn't miss a beat with any of these tunes. There was none that you would say, well, this is a dud. I think that straight through, it's a good album at the minimum. Some of this stuff gets very good and even great. So a lot to digest. And I think that if you let 10 people listen to this, I could see 10 people each having a different song that they prefer, just because each track is so, there's different appeal to different people, because again, they're hard to box into a certain genre. So I wish them nothing but the best of luck. I should also note that they have a ton of cool merchandise available. So if you go on their website, you can check that out. The links will be below. But a lot of this merchandise looks, really, really cool. And I think the designs were well done. So I hope that they, people support them, buy a shirt, buy a hoodie, or what have you, and wish them nothing but the best with this new release.
To quote Kevin Nash, buy the shirt.
Very well said. Just a couple of news items before we get to your album choice for next week. Baby Metal has announced a U.S. tour kicking off November 5th in Orlando, Florida, ending out west in Anaheim with 2 shows, the December 3rd and 4th at the House of Blues in California, and stops all throughout the country in between. Would you go see this band? Is this something you'd have an interest in?
They're playing in Raleigh, so like maybe what the hell? Like I they're fun. Like I don't love them, but I think I listened to their album that came out last year, or maybe it was the year before. I don't remember. And I was like, it's a fun listen. Like I don't mind it. So I would probably I'd check it out if it didn't like cost a ridiculous amount of money, which it probably does. But have you heard this song that they did with Electric Callboy? Because I haven't heard it. They did like a collaboration, and this combination, I have to hear this. I just found out about it recently, so I haven't had a chance to listen to it.
I haven't heard it. And I will say that the new Electric Callboy was definitely like a guilty pleasure of mine. I've got zero interest in seeing Baby Metal live, but at the same time, I'm going to listen to the collaboration because curiosity is going to get the best of me. But I wish them nothing, but the best on this U.S. tour. So good luck to them. It is what it is. If you go see them, I'll expect a full review on the podcast.
Yeah, I just sent you the clip from YouTube. I'll give it a listen to when I get a chance. But based on the first few seconds of this, it sounds like what you would expect from the Electric Callboy side of things.
Well, that tells me everything I need to know right there.
Yeah.
Another band that we've kind of talked about here and there in different capacities, but Primal Fear has signed a new record deal with Reigning Phoenix Music. I've never heard of this company, but their next studio album will be on this label, so that is something to check out. I don't know that they've been the most consistent band over the years, but I have heard a lot of songs here and there that I've liked, although I guess you kind of fall in love with a band with the one sound, so when they depart from it, it's a little bit of a shock. But I'll be checking out the new album on this label. And finally, I thought this was interesting. Kerry King says that Slayer will no longer tour again. Now, I don't know if this is one of those, we'll play isolated shows for $500,000 or $1 million a piece, but he's saying no more full-length Slayer tours. If you had to bet, you think there's going to be another Slayer tour? Is this going to be like the Ozzy retirement tour?
I don't know who's worse, pro wrestlers or musicians, when it comes to fake retirements. Like this, how many? I think Terry Funk still isn't retired, and he died last year. So I mean, it's just wild. We'll see. I wouldn't bet on this being, a true retirement. It really does take like a band like a Neil Peart to pass away. Like it takes like an iconic member of the band to really just not be alive for me to feel like it's officially like not gonna happen. I still think that there enough money could come to Page and Plant where something could happen. Money talks. I know it's been a long time that they've held out, but kidding me? I think I've said before, they could sell those tickets for $5,000 a piece of the remaining members of Led Zeppelin and Dave Grohl and they would sell out.
Hell yeah.
So, it is what it is.
I agree. Never say die, and Ozzy still rules.
Still rules Ozzy.
What am I listening to next week? It's been a while, so I feel like, since you've had a selection. I'm really curious to hear what I'm going to be spending my time with.
Well, I'll make you wait a little bit longer because I just wanted to mention one last thing. We had a replacement announced for Prague Power this year, and as we tend to focus quite a bit of our attention on the festival, I thought it would be worth mentioning. This all kind of came about pretty quickly in the last couple of days. Literally, the last time we sat down and recorded, we thought we were seeing Elaine play at Prague Power, and unfortunately the band had to pull out. They were replaced by Illumishade, who I can only assume had a working visa still from, I think they had toured the U.S. as recently as last month. I think that they're a great addition, a really, I think, great, not leaving the initial genre too far. You're not replacing Elaine with Forbidden. So I think it's a nice move. I'm excited because I have yet to see Illumishade live, but I've really enjoyed their albums thus far. So kudos to the Prague Power crew for getting this put together as quickly as they did with a really high quality band. It's hard to do. There's 3 months to go before the festival. It's hard to get a really a name band like this to fill about the middle part of a lineup, but they did a hell of a job, and I'm looking forward to seeing this. Hopefully Elaine can make their way back to the States in the future, but this is another great add to the festival.
I did not see them on their run of U.S. shows. I'm really excited
about
this.
Were they opening for somebody, or?
They were. I forget which tour it was. I don't know if it was Corpaclani or something. I forget what tour it was, but they were opening for somebody. Maybe Visions of Atlantis. The tour escapes me at this point. But
it was actually Corpaclani and Visions of Atlantis, apparently.
Well, then I really hit the nail on the head then with that guess, which I kind of pulled out of my ass. But I have seen Elaine live. They're very good. I would be happy to see them again, but I'm really looking forward to this. And I think that I don't know that I would have been able to name a better replacement. I feel like it's truly a perfect replacement, and I'm very much looking forward to their set.
Same. It's thank God for the visas not expiring after the tours end, because that comes in handy. Because I guess it was either that or they would have had to come up with a U.S. band, and I don't know who the obvious choice would be for that. That slot in the lineup. So kudos to Glenn and company. So as far as next week goes, I've kind of waffled back and forth on this one, but I'm going to go back to my original plan. We've talked about a lot of albums from 1994 this year, being that it's kind of a lot of albums, 30-year anniversaries. And like I had mentioned before, there'd be even more if we hadn't done so many albums from 1994 prior to this year. I mentioned Nine Inch Nails and Green Day and definitely some more of the alt bands like The Offspring with their Smash album, but also, Awake by Dream Theater. This is one that came out. I'm having a hard time nailing down an exact date of when it was released in 1994. Metalarchives.com says it was released in Japan on February 18th. Wikipedia says it was released on May 9th. Either way, we're late. But here it is anyway. We're going to talk about the very first Yngwie Malmsteen album I ever owned, The Seventh Sign.
This is a good choice.
Which I remember it being kind of a hot find back in the day because there was not a domestic version of this album at the time. And oddly enough, we talk about the vaunted mixtape that Ralph made me to kind of introduce me to metal. It had 2 songs from this album, so I was always very fascinated and really wanted to get my hands on this album, and it wasn't until years later because it was just so hard to find. And definitely have some fun stories of our friends finding it. I'm curious what your memories are of finding the album, but I've kind of had this one in my back pocket for a while, and so I decided I'm going to bust it out next week. But I know probably a lot of old school Yngwie fans are like, how the hell is this your first Yngwie album? but that just happens to be the one. And then I always was a sucker for Mike Vesser's vocals. I mean, he was only with Yngwie for this album and the subsequent magnum opus album, Copyright Us. But yeah, I just have a lot of fond memories of this one. I have to say there are songs on here that I don't particularly love, but there's also some songs on here that I absolutely love. I think this is a very uneven album, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you.
I think this is going to make for great conversation. I adored a lot of this album back in the day, and I think I'm going to hate it now. But so I don't know what's going to happen. And I say that with all due respect. I love Mike Viscera's vocals.
I'm pretty sure I already know what my song of the week is. So, I think I know what my dud of the week is too, which I don't think we have officially introduced into the proceedings.
It's a new category here at the Metal Exchange.
Yeah,
but no, I'm looking forward to this. This is a good choice. And part of me is surprised we haven't picked it yet, and part of me is not surprised at all. So I guess it cuts both ways.
Well, this is only going to be the second Yngwie album we've covered, and the first one was a while ago. We covered the Marching Out album in May of 2021, so it's been 3 years since we've talked about it.
Yeah, we're due. Due. Good choice, my friend. Good choice. As I said earlier, give us a like and a follow if you like what you hear. We obviously appreciate the support, and it helps others find the show. I want to hear all about your Symphony X experience on the next episode, so that'll be something to look forward to. And with that, stay metal, my friend. I hope you enjoy the week, and I will talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, buddy.